Boom Leeds, who's a Patreon. Sign up. If you want to email in, if you're a Patreon, it's literally like a VIP line because there's so much business stuff going through the Gmail, haveawordpod@gmail.com. This message came through the Patreon. A good comedy promoter. Yo, got a question for you. I run a music venue in Leeds and have been working and promoting international artists for over 15 years now. The music I work with is pretty niche and it's a lot of fun. But what makes a good comedy promoter? Never even flirted with it, but I'd like to give it a go and maybe start up a night at our venue. Many thanks. Chris, who works at Boom Leeds. I don't know why we're doing an advert for Boom Leeds.
Shout out.
What makes a good... You know what's a more fun question? What makes a shit comedy promoter? And then just work it out from there.
I think it's really important to be diverse as a comedy promoter. You can't be a white man and be promoting comedy anymore.
Oh, really?
Straight white man. There's too many straight white men promoting comedy.
No. I totally agree. I will only put one straight white man.
If you're not a black dwarf lesbian, then I don't want to do your gig.
Why?
In fact, I'm not taking any gigs at the minute that aren't offered to me by black lesbian dwarfs.
Yeah.
Or Asian lesbian dwarfs. Or South American lesbian dwarfs. Or Jewish, ethnically Jewish lesbian dwarfs.
Yeah.
Why dwarfs? You didn't say tall white men.
No. I just think dwarfs need to,
Are they the opposite of a man?
They just need to pull the finger out.
Of what?
It is funny. It is funny on the promoter forum, the comedy forum, where they're like, we only want a woman for this slot. You're like, yeah, I can see that is important, but it just reads badly, doesn't it? Why don't you offer it out and then only pick from the women that apply? Like, what is the need at the point of the advert to be like, listen, you dick-wielding fuck knuckles? No. I know there's 95% fucking answers. Go on.
I've got something to tell you, which is very relevant. So look, what we're talking about here, we're sort of doing comedy industry in jokes, and there's people listening who may not listen to every episode. They might not know sort of the ins and outs and stuff.
We need to.
Been a large push in not only TV comedy for a while now, but also on the circuit to have more diverse bills. And we were sort of talking about it in the break there about like the Comedy Store in London got a lot of new blood in, because for a while, if you looked at a Comedy Store lineup, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was 5 photos of the same fella. They all had a blazer on, and they were white and a bit older. And there was a sort of long overdue acknowledgement across the comedy industry that this probably needs to change.
Yeah, your lineup shouldn't look like a second time round stag do.
Johnny Two Divorces is on his 3rd stag.
Like a Syrian hairline.
He's only got 4 mates left. Yeah.
Your comedy bill should look like Syrian Prisoners Award available for hair transplants. That's what it should look like.
Who's clothing?
So there was an acknowledgement that it was time for things to change, and it's slowly changing, and it's good. But as a result of that, there's now things like there's comedy forums that me and Dan are a part of, which are private places where people who are running comedy nights, like maybe this guy's about to, will post and say, I need a comedian to do this long on this day on this bill. Here's the fee. Here's the email. Send me a video if I don't know who you are.
Adam has already written in just like explaining it more than some of the lazy cunt promoters who are so fucking lazy. They go on the forum and go, gig, Sheffield, Tuesday, October. Who wants it? You're like, good God, you fat lazy twat. Write a proper email.
So, but there's not, because there's been a push for diversity. If a guy has got sort of a show that he's running and he's got sort of 3 white men on, they're now putting posts up like, I need to fill this spot on that bill, but because I've got 3 white men, it has to be a woman. And I understand it, and I get it, and I think in the short to medium term, it might be the right thing to do in a lot of the cases, because I understand the need for representation and for girls to be going to comedy shows and be going, oh, we can do this as well, rather than just seeing 4 white men do it. I do understand that argument. However, I was at a comedy club the other day. I won't say what comedy club it was, and neither will Carl.
Tough crowd. How many does it hold? 1,000?
10 million people it was.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
The Sahara Desert Comedy Club. And there was a Comic-Con, and I'm not going to name her, but she was talking to the guy who books the acts at the venue, the promoter, and the club owner, and they were talking about lots of women in comedy and stuff, and she was adamant, like, this is how it should be done, that if there's no women available on a weekend, every single bill should have a woman on, she said. And I understand that argument when it's possible, right? But there's the fact of the matter is there's a lot less women than men doing comedy. And that means the pool of talent is smaller. And that means there's less good women. There's less bad women too. Because there's a lot of really, really, really shit men at stand-up. And they don't get gigs either. But as a result of that, the really strong female acts get booked up. Because every club is trying to do this. And here, what she said to this club owner.
Both of them work all the time.
Yeah. What's that, Jim? Have you seen that Jim Jeffries joke?
I'm being a dick.
Have you seen that Jim Jeffries joke?
Go on.
He's like, I love female comedians, like Sarah Silverman or the other one. Just horrible.
Gervais did a very, 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 very similar joke to that today.
In all truth, it's 10-1. It's like literally the ratio is one good female act to 9. And that's the truth. Like, jokes aside, the ratio is, it's so like slanted in the favor of men. Which isn't a good thing.
No,
anyway.
It isn't. And we like the reason for this pushing diversity and to put more women on the TV and to put more women on these lineups is so that more women feel like it's possible for them, and that gets ever closer to there being a 50-50 divide. I don't think there ever will be a 50-50 divide between men and women as an industry-wide standard. As like there'll be half the people doing comedy are men and half women. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but you'll get a lot closer to it, and that's what you're aiming for. But this comic said to the club owner, if all of the women that you rate and think are good enough to play your club are busy on a weekend, you should just book any woman, one you don't think is good, and put her on,
right,
rather than an act who's male who you think is brilliant.
Yeah, that's just so painful to even hear.
It's the reason I sort of found it funny and insane is because that does not do for comedy what she's hoping it's going to do. Because I've got friends and family who to this day still say to me, I don't find female comedians funny.
Same here.
There's a lot of people who say it, and it's a ridiculous thing to say. Our guest today is Helen Bauer. It was absolutely hilarious, and our listeners are going to fucking adore Helen.
Just makes me think you've not watched enough stand-up. That's what it makes me think.
100%. But it's awful that sort of attitude towards women in comedy is there. However, it is there. And the way to change that is to book more brilliant women and put brilliant female comics in front of audiences where they can go, oh my God, no, she was great. And then that attitude will slowly change. Putting bad female comics is going to keep that unhealthy, long misused and misheld attitude in place. If you're putting open spots on a weekend, you look at the bills of Hot Water sometimes. I'm there in a couple of weeks. I think Danny McLaughlin's comparing, who is one of the best compares in the world. It's an all-white male bill, which we should be moving away from. Or trying to, but Hot Water's attitude, and it's their club and they can do what they want, and who can tell Hot Water how to run a comedy club when they're one of the most successful clubs in the world? It's Danny McLaughlin, Paul Smith, me, and Mark Nelson.
At least he's Scottish.
At least he's Scottish. At least he's not Scouse.
And Danny wears a cap.
He does, and I do on Wednesdays when I can't be asked doing it.
A bit of diversity.
But that bill, every single one of us is going to burn the house down that night. There's not going to be one act who doesn't destroy the place because everyone's a killer and it's the best club in maybe in the world. If you put a bad act in the middle of that, and because Hot Water runs 3 and 4 shows a night, sometimes you're not the middle. You're an act that weekend, so you've got to either open or close. Can you imagine if you put a bad act on just because you're trying to tick a box after I've opened and Paul Smith has had to do the middle? Because I'm telling you.
You wouldn't do it if it was a man or a woman.
No.
Like, couldn't you imagine putting an act that is not up to the job over one of the best 25 headliners in the country? No. So someone's gender should not be the thing that gets them that gig. Because it's unfair on them, the crowd. It's just a bad booking.
I totally understand you can get to a point where you think that there's a female comic who's really good, a 7 out of 10 comic, and you've got an option of booking an 8 or a 9 out of 10 male comic, but the rest of the bill is male, I can understand going, we'll take the slightly weaker comic because she's still going to do a job and we don't want everyone to sound the same on the bill. I understand that attitude. I also understand why clubs don't run with that policy, and their attitude is you've got to be the absolute best act available and that's how you get the gig. I can see both sides of it. I really can. But to go, if you've got the option of Phil Nickel, who is a 10 out of 10 club comic, unfollowable at times, if you've got him available to go on a bill that is already all male, to say that you should book a new 2 out of 10 inexperienced bad comic who has not got the experience of dealing with Liverpool on a Saturday night at 10:15.
People have paid nearly 20 quid for a ticket and you are pushing your agenda. Like, it's something that that's a conversation I've had with a punter at the Frog. This woman came up and was like, there's not enough women on this bill. I was like, the Frog is, their general manager, Jess, is one of the most fervent sort of, she's working really hard to push women in comedy. She runs a festival called Manchester, it's the Women in Comedy Festival. Her bills in Manchester, she pushes the female act, female host, where it can, and still you gig at the Frog and it is an all-male bill. Because although they are trying to progress the place of women in our industry, it cannot be to the detriment, like to put a fucking pothole in your night of comedy. Because to have that agenda is fine, but there has to also be some common sense beyond that. And that whole, it's not as scientific as you're a 7 out of 10, you're a 7.5. People have different, but it is pretty obvious when someone's new, learning, not up to scratch, and someone is perfect for that spot, experience, quality, brilliant. Like, to swap those out because you have basically a political agenda is bad booking.
It's bad for everyone. It's bad for the club, it's bad for the audience, and it's bad for women in comedy.
So, I mean, Hot Water have got some criticism for this over the years, and it bugs me because I gig at Hot Water with women, and I don't, like, it's annoying when people are like, you just book men, and you're like, cool. Well, I've played Hot Water with female acts. Like, what's, like, I feel like it's such an unnecessary jab.
And I know that this portion of this podcast is going to sort of be sent around a couple of comedians' WhatsApp groups, and it's going to be, it's 2 straight white men talking about women in comedy. Do we really need that again? Well, it's our podcast and we'll do whatever we want, so shut the fuck up and suck a fart up my ass.